And with me today, I'm joined by Dr. Shafer, who is a neurologist, a Shetty certified life coach, author, publisher, and podcast host, devoted to one core mission, which is to help people reclaim their stories and consciously build a future that reflects who they truly are. Her journey is anything but linear, beginning as a musician before becoming a physician. That rhymes. Dr. Shafer understands transformation from the inside out, how identity evolves and how resilience is built, and how healing happens when science, creativity, and self awareness all meet. As a host of Talks with Dr. Shafer, she explores growth, health, healing, and the mindset shifts required to move forward after life's hardest moments. Dr. Shafer is also the founder of Little House of Dreams Publishing, which is a children's literature focused company created to empower young voices through writing and storytelling. And she's also the producer of What's Up Young Authors, a literary podcast encouraging youth to write, publish, and believe in the power of their words. Passionate about advocacy and recovery, she founded We Don't Tell Our Stories, which is an online community and upcoming book dedicated to supporting survivors of domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. Through education, music, writing, and community connection, Dr. Shafer helps survivors move from silence to self-trust. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Shafer. I've absolutely love your bio and all the work that you're doing right now. It's extraordinary.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for the beautiful platform that you are building. This is exactly what we need to be doing, meeting people where they are in their story and supporting them so that they can get to a place where they do feel that they're a victor. And then they can take those skills for when the next challenge in life comes, because it's coming. Even when we feel like we're on the top of the mountain, there's another ahead of us. We've got to go down the valley, helps them feel prepared for the next. So I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. And so you talk a lot about reclaiming your story. So what does that actually mean in practice rather than just conceptually?
Yeah. So I actually, my first instinct is to ask you what it means to you. When you hear that, reclaim your story,
Yeah,
what does it mean to you?
to me, like it just screams us not only reclaiming our self-identity, which we lose because of, social norms, social conditioning, or trauma, unfortunately, and the hardships that we've gone through, but also the fact that, we a lot of us we are raised in cultures which then condition us to be someone who we're actually not. And so our story just becomes this, you know, falsified story of who we are rather than our authentic selves. And so I feel like reclaiming your story is for us to actually come back to ourselves and to bring us back home to ourselves.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I love the phrasing that you chose. And that's exactly what it is. It's bringing us back home to our story. I think often early in life, we're really programmed to reach outward externally, whether it's, I'm going to get that degree and that's going to be proof that I am worthy, right? Or it's going to get me a lot of money, or whatever external metric it's going to give me that will then somehow magically reflect back on me and make me finally feel like I found myself.
Yeah.
But the only place to find ourselves is within and to really look at our story. And what I love about hearing you speak on what reclaiming your story means to you is I think the reason that I chose this way to connect with people, whether it's in a clinic or whether it's on a stage or on a podcast or through a book, is that through asking the question of your story, we learn what you truly want for your future because we focus in on your story. It's almost like a grounding exercise, but it's hidden, right? Because a lot of times when someone asks you to, okay, take a deep breath, close your eyes, put your hands on your chest, where are you feeling that in your body? All these really wonderful techniques, a lot of people might not be ready to get into their body yet.
True.
They're not ready. And
Mm.
that might feel, they might feel anxious or nervous around other people. They may not have healed a relationship they have with their body yet. And so that might be a barrier.
Mm.
But we're all listening to our thoughts in our heads all day long. So when you ask someone to consider what would reclaiming your story mean,
Mm.
it's an easier starting point. And for myself, from a coaching perspective and from a clinical perspective of starting to get people on the path of understanding how much their health matters, how much their story matters, I'm going to be much more successful to get them into an open and ready state to be what we call, and it's a horrible word in medicine, we call it compliant. Um, they're going to be ready to go on this journey if they're not having that pushback. And starting with tools that you already have is a much more successful and effective way to start changing habits and reaching goals than to start in a place that you're not ready for, right? I don't feel connected with my body, and you just set off a bunch of alarm bells in me. So I like to start with reclaiming your story because we all have an intimate relationship with our story. And I think we're all like kettles about to explode. We're all looking to be heard and seen. And starting, taking the time to acknowledge that and figuring out what's the real way I want to do that can be transformative for someone.
Wow, love that. Love that. So, how did your own journey lead you to this work of healing, growth, and storytelling?
Yeah. So I started out my life journey in music. I was a professional musician by the time I was 14. I graduated high school early. I had no idea I'd be a doctor, I can tell you. I didn't even know that I was smart at that point in my life. Or then we'll talk about all the limiting beliefs and all of the things that we hold that aren't true about ourselves that are we carry and that affect our life choices, right? But at that point in time, I thought my journey was to be a musician. Wonderful time in my life. I moved out to New York City and lived on couches when I was 17.
Mm.
I ended up because I think I was really seeking externally for that worthiness and that acceptance. I ended up in a relationship very young. I moved back. I gave up everything. I had been accepted to the School of Music Business at NYU. I was already working towards another degree, and I gave all that up to go on a different path. I moved back to the Midwest. And when I did that, I left behind everything that I'd been building for, I really started, practicing daily music and learning instruments when I was 5. So I'd been building that for 15 years. I changed my life completely.
Mm.
And someone asked me, what I was going to do next. I ended up getting a degree in psychology, which I absolutely loved.
Brilliant.
I actually intended to be a sex and relationship therapist, not something I talk about a lot,
Mm.
but that's actually something that I was intending to become. I was a research assistant working on many studies at the Kinsey Institute when I was in undergraduate, continuing that degree after moving from New York.
Mm.
And again, here comes that external validation piece. Someone said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't be a therapist. You're too smart." And remember, this is someone who just a few years earlier, I I didn't think I was smart at all.
Wow.
And so this person said, "You're so smart. You should you should become a psychiatrist, not a therapist, right? Like you can't stop at therapist," which one is such a silly thought.
Mm.
Um, but because this was one of my primary caregivers growing up who said this to me and this external validation seeking behavior that I had, I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. So I very quickly, in a year's time, got all of my prerequisites done for medical school. I applied to one medical school. I went to that medical school. And there was a time in the medical school, I realized really quickly I didn't want to be a psychiatrist. I think a therapist would have been a better fit for me in that field than psychiatry. But I fell in love with some things. I really loved dermatology. I was top of my class. And that's like, again, that's what everyone who was top of their class did. They become a dermatologist, right? Because that is a great lifestyle and a great field. No call, all those things. But then finally, my third year of medical school, I think I'd been so beaten down by medicine at this point in time. And I think it is kind of when you're really in the thick of it and you're just exhausted and you're trying to find the will to go on in your life. That's when you start to think, like, what do I really want? And that's really the first time that I made a decision that was more congruent with my goals and what really lit me up, what lit a fire in me. And that was neurology. I did my rotation in medical school and I just simply adored my patients. I adored the staff that taught us everything about neurology from neuroanatomy to the biochemistry and to the amazing neurologists that lended us their amazing mentorship and just the incredible knowledge that they had. I went to such an amazing medical school with such an amazing neurology program. And so I went along that route. Again, being the person I was, I always loved a challenge, right? Moved to New York City, slept on couches when I was 17 years old, right? Like that's just who I am. I can do it. I moved to a really small community where there was a 18 to 22-month wait list to see a neurologist. I covered 22 counties of patients. I was on call 10 to 14 days a month and just running around like crazy. And I was working so hard and I loved it. I really loved every minute of it. But the piece that people didn't see was that at home, I was getting no support. I was also a mom. I also was trying to be the best at everything at home, just like I was at work and overextending myself, doing the sourdough bread, the garden, do everything myself, doing everything, doing all the things to prove that I was worthy because I still had a primary relationship in my life that was kind of reflecting still, because that's how we choose our partners often, unfortunately, reflecting still that childhood wound of coupling, of pairing, of relating to the closest people in my life as someone that I need to prove myself to. But
Mhm.
it's a losing game. And so I got to a place, I had my youngest child. I almost hemorrhaged to death having him. It was a very traumatic birth. And I had to take time off of work. And so now I'm stuck at home with babies, and which is not stuck, it's beautiful. But again, at home, not really adequate support, doing my best, getting ready to go back to work. I almost said school. That's funny. Getting ready to go back to work, and then COVID hit.
Wow.
And I think listeners who have been through it in recent years, I think many people relate to the pressure cooker that was that perfect storm of events that happened with COVID. And it took a situation that was just getting by, especially when you could leave your home, right? When you could socialize with other people, get a little bit of support. That took that away entirely. And now you've got a pressure cooker and it's about to explode. And just like in medical school, I had this really salient moment, this clarity, talking to a friend of mine on the phone because this was COVID. No one was talking in person that didn't live in your house. And he could see how much pain I was in, but I wasn't speaking on it because I'd been really, really um, really programmed to not speak on it. But he could see, he was my best friend for 20 years. And he said to me something that still gets me very emotional today. He said, "Do you know that you matter?"
Wow. Wow.
I mean, how does that make you feel in your body? Because for me, that just
Tingle.
cracked something open,
I just got,
right?
yeah. Wow.
I think most of us, many of us, especially people who've gone through a lot of trauma, we're on this hamster wheel running, 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 running. And we are
Mm,
running for something outside of ourselves. We're not doing it because we think we deserve it or we think we matter.
no.
And if you accept that, and especially when you hear it from someone that knows you and loves you,
Mm,
right? They know who you are. If you accept that face value as truth, then you've got to change things in your life.
Yeah.
And so that was the start of the change for me. And going through the Shetty certification was incredibly supportive and helpful for me as I ended a relationship, got back on my feet, and learned skills that medical school didn't teach me, right?
Okay.
Certainly the music industry didn't. I mean, that taught me a lot of like self-abandonment and armor wearing, but
Yeah.
didn't teach me the skills of truly honoring myself and making choices for my safety. And so something that really beautiful happened because of all of that was with my background as a neurologist and understanding how the brain and body work, having that mindset training, it just like knocked out the fourth wall. And
Mhm.
I really recognized, I thought back to how many times I'm not a person who has many regrets in life because I don't find shame and regret to be helpful. I'm very future focused. But
Okay.
so many times in a patient room where I'd be with a patient, I'd be doing everything right. I'm air quoting for people who are just listening. And they weren't getting better, right? They weren't having the efficacy or the response to the medication or the plan, the habit changes that they should be, quote unquote, should be having. And they weren't non compliant, right? They were doing the thing, they were doing everything they could. But
Mm.
now, from the perspective of connecting that brain and body and mindset experience, I realized that my lack of being able to break through that fourth wall meant that I didn't see what was really bringing them into my my consultation room that day. A really smart neurologist that I trained with would tell me, because I was always very good at looking at my notes before going into the room, and I mean by notes I mean, going through the whole life story of a patient, because with neurological um, diagnoses, it's very complicated, and there can be a lot of things that come up. You need to have a very thorough understanding of this person and their life and their medical history. But he would tell me, I would be talking about this, that, the other thing, these extra things, and he would tell me, no, 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 no. I almost always know the diagnosis before I walk in the room. The history is not that important. The most important thing is like I've looked at the notes, I've looked at the imaging, I know what's going on clinically.
Wow.
And I understand where he's coming from. He was really leaning on that science part.
Mm.
But the thing is, I can also remember having recently injured, having a traumatic injury to my body, being in an emergency room and being asked if I was safe at home and lying because I was terrified because my kid wasn't with me and I didn't know what would happen.
Okay.
You
Wow.
know,
That's yeah.
that was way more important in that moment. And there'd been some really, really scary incidents the weeks leading up to that.
Okay.
Even though I had trauma to a bone, that was actually the less important part
Yeah.
of that encounter.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine because
So
it's yeah. I mean, it's the emotional abuse that's more traumatizing than physical. Yeah.
if someone's not safe at home,
Mm.
and that's why it's so important as a physician, as a nurse, as someone who's taking intake notes, as supportive staff in any clinical setting, it's so important that we don't do what happens most of the time because we're so rushed in a clinical setting. We've got so many boxes to check.
Mm.
So important that we don't say, safe at home,
Oh God.
check. Da 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 da. Any guns in the house? Any tobacco? How much alcohol? Okay, 2 to 3, 2 to 3. Okay. Like we're more interested in judging people because we
Yeah.
know they're kind of fibbing. We're more interested in judging people about their alcohol intake because
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's almost like a social media. Sorry, I'm cleaning my nose because I'm sick. It's like this moment of judgment that we have for
Yeah.
people. But we kind of look away when we ask the question about if someone's safe at home. Because if they're not safe at home,
Okay. Open a can of worms.
you are opening a can of worms. And,
Yeah.
and that's something, it can be really tricky because there's not necessarily something you can do other than document
Yeah.
if the person on the other side of this conversation isn't ready.
Mm,
And their readiness doesn't necessarily have to do anything with, you know, their assessment of the situation, with them understanding that, yeah, they deserve to be safe. It may just be circumstances that
mm,
they feel are limiting them, they're holding them back right now.
mm,
So even if you can't, I think as doctors, we always want to fix everything. And so we don't love topics that we can't fix. It makes us feel very out of control. And control is a big thing in medicine. You know, watch any of the TV shows and you'll see like the surgeons that are throwing stuff and whatever. And of course, that's not necessarily realistic, but there's a lot of control baked into medicine. People who've gone through the training, they know it's baked into medicine.
yeah.
But none of us are God. And we can just leave that God complex at home. And when we just sit with someone on a human level when they come in and we just really look at them for those questions and we look at their body language, right? We make sure they're alone when we ask those questions. Those can save a life. So for me, I recognized from my own experience in medicine as well as my own experience just as a human going through big life challenges
Mm,
that we need to get better at asking one another questions and listening to one another's stories. And until we can do that, I can give you a prescription for all the right medicines,
yeah.
but it's
Makes
not necessarily going to work.
no. And I guess this was probably what inspired you to create We Don't Tell Our Stories.
Yes, yes. It's very much because, again, as we talked about that body experience, right? Like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, you tried to bring me into my body. My body doesn't feel like a safe place right now. Um, the reason I name the community We Don't Tell Our Stories is I want to kind of get that part out of the way. Because if I named it Time to Tell Your Stories, then it automatically for people kind of goes into the I'm not ready to tell my story. Whereas when we say we don't tell our stories, it's like, ooh, that hits. I
That is.
know what that feels like to have stories that I feel that I can't tell. And it allows me to then go on to the next step, which may be feelings of injustice or feelings of wanting to be a part of a community of people with similar experiences to you in a safe space. And so that's the idea behind We Don't Tell Our Stories. And what it is now at its beginning stages is a collection of clips, movies, music, poems, things of that nature, book recommendations that can be ways that you safely can start to learn about these concepts, right? Like I can listen to the song that feels like where I am now, right? And feel that community. But then I can see some content that's maybe a step or two ahead of me that will help pull me along so I don't get stuck. Because if we don't have those resources, we get stuck. And it's really, we have to be so careful how we help people and how we resource, though, because it can be so dangerous, right? As someone, I was reading books in my Kindle, they were listened to, or not Kindle, my Audible, and they were listened to, and I was questioned about them. They were discussed with groups of men who then would call me and say, I heard you're reading this book. What's that about? I mean, the things that women experience when they're trying to arm themselves with information to protect themselves, it can be really dangerous and hard. And so I want to be a part, a small part of putting things out in the world that women can safely use as resources on their journey of reclaiming their story, even if they're still in what I call that messy middle, right? They're not ready to build, they're still in the season of struggle. That's okay. There's someone to sit next to you in that season. But then I also want you to see off in the distance some mentors, some lives that look different than yours so that you can start to believe that you can get there too.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Thank you. And so, as a neurologist, how do you see the mindset, storytelling, and identity shaping the brain and the nervous system?
Wow, I mean, there's so many studies about trauma and how it shapes our nervous system. The way I try to frame the story that we tell ourselves and trying to, if we get to the place where we can start to imagine what the story is that we want for ourselves and how those differ, and then start making those actionable habit changes and steps towards moving forward, is to imagine. So, our nervous system, our brain, we're kind of like, so we can't make that many decisions every day, right? We
Yeah.
get decision fatigue. So imagine a time where you had to make a lot of choices and then how exhausted you felt, and you needed to
Yeah.
basically have a brain reboot because
Mm,
your nervous system, it was depleted. It needed a reset. There's only so many decisions we can make in a day. And so what we lean into, because our days are long, we do a lot of things, is instead of being deliberate and consciously thinking about things, we have a lot of loops. We have a lot of patterns that we just go through during the day. And that can be physically patterns, right? We talk about motor memory, like things that we just do. We play the piano, we get to a point of expertise, and like we don't think about playing the piano, we just do it.
mm,
Our mindset is similar. We have that emotional memory and that neurochemical memory, the wiring of like when I feel, when someone looks at me a certain way because maybe home's not safe, I have fear activated in my body and I shut down. And then I make a choice to stay safe that's actually not keeping me safe, right? And it's abandoning me and it's not allowing me to go after the habits that I want to do, right? It's not allowing me to go after that new job, or it's not allowing me to choose my safety because I'm just stuck in these loops. And so when we think about the brain, it's really helpful to help us let go of shame when we're wanting to change our habits and therefore our life's trajectory, to say, listen, you're just stuck in a loop, and it's not, don't shame or blame yourself. It's not that you're weak. It's just this is a loop.
yeah.
And if we want things to change, we have to change them and we have to take small steps, because you can't, like, imagine in your brain, because the brain's such a beautiful thing. Like if you actually look at neurologically, the neuroanatomy of all these pathways that are going on,
Mm,
like it's not like you can jump from one pathway to another. No,
for
you have to prune, you have to build those pathways. And so it makes a lot of sense why we can say, oh my gosh, I want to run a marathon. And why? Well, but if now I'm literally not exercising at all and I make that my goal, that's a leap. That's a pathway that I don't have yet. Whereas if I say, like, okay, I'm gonna run a marathon, but I haven't exercised yet, well, that's not helpful. I could say, I want to run a marathon, so I'm going to get the gym membership this week. And then the next week, I'm going to go for 5 minutes. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going to go for 10 minutes, right? And we can make little habit changes, and it sounds embarrassingly small, but we're building the pathway, right? When you say you want to build a house, you don't just like snap your fingers and you have a house. You had to go from the foundation and the wiring and all these tiny little pieces. But we don't think about our lives that way and our habits and our goals that way. We think really big,
yeah.
and we really need to scale it back and think about that wiring in our brains and say, like, okay, if I want to make a different pathway and I'm committed to this, I need to start building.
Lovely. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And like in terms of when we're releasing shame or when we're actually rewriting our internal narrative, what happens neurologically then?
Hmm. So when we're rewriting our stories, like we're getting stuck in those pathways,
Yeah.
right? If we don't make those small steps. So it really goes down to, and something I said earlier is, when we want neurologically to grow new pathways, we have to start where we are.
Mm,
We have to use the tools that we have to then build towards creating those new pathways. We can't skip steps,
no.
right? Because this old pathway is just going to be screaming out for us to feed it because it's hungry. The brain is the greediest organ in our body. It wants 20% of our blood flow at any given time. And do you know why we faint? We faint often, not every time, but often it's because our brain's not getting enough blood flow. And our brain is like, listen, I am the head honcho here. It's funny because it says head in it. But like I am large and in charge. And if I don't get my 20% of blood flow, I'm going to give you some warnings, maybe make you like, feel a little hot, sweaty, palpitations, blood pressure changes, heart racing, tunnel vision. I'm not going to give you much time. If I don't get what I want, you can sit down. I'm putting you down either way. So like sit down or get put down. And that's the thing. Our brains will go about their habits, right? They will force us. So we have to, if we want a different outcome, we want a different looking life, we have to invest in our mindset. Because when we invest in our mindset, that's how we can kind of dive into those neural pathways and start fiddling with them and reframing them. And it may sound, I know there are people who say, this sounds like a little too like woo woo. Like, what do you think we're doing with children when we read them books? When we sit with them and we look them in the eyes and we smile at them. We're forming their neural pathways and we're helping them prune the pathways in their brain that they don't need and focus and redirect to the ones that they do need, right? And babies sleep so much when they're doing that, by the way. Teenagers sleep so much because they're going through another really big stage of development of their brains. And so it exhausts them. I think that's an important thing to bring up too. If you're going through one of those seasons of rebuilding, right? You've gone through your season of struggle and now you're in your season of rebuilding. You may have a lot of goals, but right now you need to nourish yourself, right? You need to sleep. You need to give yourself the opportunity to rest so that, because we know that our brains, when we're resting, when we're sleeping, they're getting rid of things like all of I talk about like the toxic waste or the trash from the day, all the metabolic breakdown products, they're there. They need to be packaged and taken away because they're harmful to our brains if we're not getting enough rest. And we're in a time where we're having a lot of metabolic activity in our brain because we're growing, we're learning, we're changing, we're making new pathways. That's also going to be a time where we need to rest more. And that goes back to what we've talked about with shame. Shame and blame, just try to release it. You don't have time for that. You're building. You don't have time to shame yourself.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like we said, the brain, because those thoughts all take up a lot of energy. You have to get, if you're building a new life for yourself, you have to kind of make the cuts. Say like, sorry, you're not making the cut, shame. I don't have energy for you.
Love that. Oh, wow. What a fantastic way to describe it. Thank you. And so, yeah, speaking about young voices, what inspired you to create the Little House of Dreams Publishing and focus on children's literature?
Hmm. I was inspired by my daughter.
Oh,
Yeah. A lot of people jokingly call her my copy, although I like it and I dislike it at the same time. I like it because it's quite true, but I dislike it because she's just her own incredibly special, incredibly talented, unique human being who I just wish the world for, and I want her life to be so much more expansive than mine ever could be, right? So I am so excited about the potential of her life. She was going through, and I think it's important for us to take a step back and recognize this. Like when we're going through a big struggle, often the people around us are too.
true.
And again, that's not to shame us and make us feel like, oh gosh, we should be caring about them. Oh, stop caring about me. No, it's to kind of also recognize we're not alone.
Mm,
They're
true.
going through this too. And often, when we're looking for an antidote on our worst days of our loneliness and our despair, it's helping someone else and reaching out for community. And my community at that time was so small. It was so tiny because I'd been so isolated over the years. And my kids were my community.
Mm,
And my daughter was going through a lot of what I was going through too. And she was having to navigate these feelings without the coping skills that I had as an adult, right? Without all of the opportunities to grow and reason and things that come with, having a 40-something-year-old brain. Um, or a 30-something-year-old brain when your frontal lobe is fully developed.
Mm.
Although did you notice that they continually change the number on when your frontal lobe is fully developed? A
Yeah.
year ago we'd say 25. Now they're like 30? Maybe,
Who knows?
maybe.
It must
It
differ from individual to individual.
Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? Sometimes it feels like it never gets like fully on board. But again, that's also opportunity and doing the reps on that mindset work and on changing the trajectory because so many of us get stuck
Mm.
in the systems and the habits and the pathways that we developed as kids to survive. And so for me, seeing manifesting things that I didn't want for my daughter, seeing them manifest in her and wanting her to really understand and live differently than I had, that her voice truly mattered. Writing books for her was a natural way for her to start flexing that muscle and learning to share her voice. And so it was her second grade, and we were homeschooling because, again, COVID. And she decided she wanted to write a book about the foxes that lived outside of our home. And the mama fox had four kids. And so it was fun to see them come out. And so she was inspired to write her series Foxtails, and then Foxtails 2, and then Wolf Tales. So she's been very focused on this life. But the reason that she loved it so much, and she told me as she started to get to have opportunities to go on television and talk about it, and to go to libraries, to sell her books at farmers markets, to talk to people.
Mm.
And then to have her own podcast, What's Up Young Authors, where she talks about writing. She interviews other authors, both other little kid authors and
Oh.
mentor authors. The thing that really just described her experience in general was, and she said this several times on television, and it always just hit me right in the heart because it's exactly what I wanted for her.
Mm.
When she would ask why she does what she does, she would explain that it feels so good as a child to have an opportunity to speak your truth, to share your voice, and for it to be truly listened to and heard and appreciated. And she wanted to make sure that other kids, so she wasn't going on stage because she wanted to be on stage. She was going on stage and going on television, all these things, and writing these books because she wanted other kids to be inspired to share their stories as well. And so, because of her experience with the publishing house, then we thought we need to think bigger. We need to create a place for not just our child, but other children to share their stories so that they understand how important their voices are. And so that has been a big part of the mission. And the long-term goal that she has, her big goal, is that she wants to take over the publishing house in a few years, well, probably 10 years. And she wants to be working with children who have life-limiting or life-ending diseases, disabilities, and help them, if they are authors, share their stories in compilations, in books that could be used as fundraisers for hospitals, those sorts of things. So she was able to see, again, we talk about habits and growth and where do I want to be? What are my goals? She was able to see, like, okay, if I want to get here, it starts with me just writing this down.
Mm.
And then the process, because it's a big process to get a book published, work with an illustrator, all those things, and then have it printed and then sell it and talk to people and promote it, right? There's so many steps.
There is.
But along the way, she's met incredible people that David Newell, for example, he was Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. She got to share her book with him. And he was able to reflect on his experiences working with Mr. Rogers and how inspiring that was. She was able to go out to LA and be on this really cool program that they have called California Live and talk about empowering other kids to, whether it's through storytelling or something else, to share their stories.
Wow.
Right. And so it was just a full circle moment of like, gosh, this isn't about me, right? This isn't about me reclaiming my life because that's so small. This is about encouraging others through my actions. It can be, like a pilot light, maybe, but encouraging others to do the same and really step into their full potential and then just see what happens as a community when we do that.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Thank you so much. And what do you think happens to a child when their story's so valued at such a young age?
Hmm.
Growing up.
I think when I think we can answer that question really well because I think it's such a rare experience. I think many of us didn't experience that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, what often happens when people interview her or hear her story is they tear up because it's reflecting on them like, wow. Just
Mm,
like when I asked you, gosh, can you imagine if someone said, "Do you know you matter?" Like
yeah.
that that hits you. And I think that speaks to that there are a lot of people walking around feeling like their voice doesn't matter and their life doesn't matter. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people going around like that. And I think when you give kids a different perspective and you tell them how much they matter and that other things don't matter as much. And that starts with, Colin Corby, who is someone who works in tech, and he has a program for, detoxing, digital detoxing. You know, starting that trajectory of teaching your children self-worth,
Yeah.
they do have to learn it from their caregivers, right? We have to
Yep.
model certain things.
Mm,
And it can start from something as simple because we know that these things, I'm holding up my phone for people who are just listening. We know these things are like ever present and ever competing for our attention with our kids. We can teach them how important they are by simply saying, I'm going to turn off my phone. I don't need this.
mm,
I'm would not, there's no other place I would rather be than right here talking to you.
wow. Wow. That's powerful.
It's so powerful. And so Colin Corby said that to me just flippantly in a neighbor in a excuse me, in a my cough medicine, I think, is speaking in an interview we did. And he just kind of flippantly said that. And I had to stop him. And I said, I literally almost started crying. Because
Damn.
can
Yeah.
you imagine, even if you went to coffee with a friend, if your friend did that, you'd want to like give him a hug.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's so
We don't
beautiful.
do that. Yeah, we don't do that for each other.
No, we don't.
We
Yeah.
don't speak those things even if we feel them. So from our kids to our friends, our families, our colleagues, if we can get really intentional about expressing
Mm,
how important that person is, I think that those are the seeds that we're planting because when they feel important, they recognize other people's importance too. And then pardon me for a second, and then when we have all these horrific things happening in the world,
mm,
if you're a person that you don't think you matter, you may not have the same response to human suffering that someone who believes in the fiber of their being of the importance of every human life. And so
yeah.
I think that it's not selfish when we do that for our kids and we're not raising little like egomaniacs. We're raising humans who value humanity. And I think that that's a recipe for success for our human race. And it's something that we need to invest in. People talk a lot about investing in AI and all this stuff that dehumanizes us more. And while we can't fully escape AI at this point in time, I think the best investment any of us can make right now is in communication and community and building a strong sense of self so that we can ride the waves of the tough stuff that's happening right now and that's coming down the pipeline.
Mm,
And then once we get through that season of survival, say like, what do we want to build? Because this isn't working, right? What's going on right now? It's just not working for people.
Yeah, totally. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head where I just feel like there's so much low self-esteem going around the younger generation. So just by allowing that space for them to share their stories would have a huge impact on their self-esteem. Because it seems to be getting worse. I mean, I was looking at some stats about, just how many children actually feel depressed. It's phenomenal. I think was it 70% or something. It's just
Oh my gosh, and the suicide rates. I just had a young girl on my show. It hasn't aired yet. It's going to air in January, who had a family member die of suicide who was a young person. And because she has been raised by someone who tells her her voice matters, she said, we need to do something about this. And to have a big impact, you do need to start with those small steps. And so, what she did, her fourth grade year, she actually started having a buddy bench because she had noticed that people were being bullied. And so, she had a buddy bench in her classroom outside at recess where if you were feeling you were being bullied, you would go to that bench. Not only does it give you a little time out, but also is a signal to other people like that person needs a buddy and they can go and support you. Well, after seeing how popular that was and how helpful it was when a family member passed away that the next year in fifth grade, she decided that she would fundraise for suicide awareness benches that have 988 on them, which is the number here in the States that you call if you're having thoughts of harming yourself. And that you matter and all these beautiful phrases, a place to come and sit and reflect and also signal your struggle to someone else because we're so in our heads because that's how we're wired. But I think most of us, if we see someone is struggling, most of us, we want to help. But because of that dehumanization and the loss of community and just looking at each other and listening to one another, we're not catching those signals. And so I think it's really beautiful that this, young girl said, we need to signal to people.
I love that. Wow.
We need to address this.
How intelligent. What an
Oh, she's
inspiration.
amazing.
I love
Yeah, so inspiring. And it tells you like if you have a good thought, don't
mm.
have a good thought and let it go. Write it down.
Oh, love that.
Let it germinate. What can you do in your community? And then you'll be really, really shocked at how that could potentially grow. I do content creation and some social media management just because I just can't get enough of storytelling and helping create. I know, right? Like, why, Shafer? Stop. I can't stop. I love it too much. And so I do social media for a charity and they have such an amazing story because they went from doing a costume giveaway in Austin, Texas. It started literally a gentleman, Christoph Wagner, saw children the first time he ever had trick-or-treaters one year. He saw children just in basically plain clothes with some pretend blood splatter, right? And he's like, I don't think that's what they wanted to wear. I think they don't have enough resources. And I'm going to do something about it. So the next year, he just out of his garage, he spent the year collecting costumes and he just did a giveaway out of his garage. And
Wow.
it grew and grew and grew until last year, which was the ninth anniversary. There are a bunch of tents. It's outside. They gave away over 2,000 costumes, and it
Wow.
was featured on. It was Saturday morning, which is a big CBS program here. It was picked up by the Washington Post, I believe People. It was all over the news. And so I think it's really important that we understand if we want to make a big impact, and it goes back to, rewiring those pathways. If we want to have a big impact, we have to figure out, okay, what is it I want to make the impact on, right? What is the change I want to see in the world? And what are the steps I can do in my community, in my daily habits in my life to work towards that and just commit to that? Because if Christoph hadn't decided to give away costumes. Because a lot of us, we want to do something nice and we think, well, who am I to do that? Or what if I embarrass them? Or, whatever limiting belief you have. If he had done that, we wouldn't be where we are. Now it'll be 10 years in 2026, September 26, 2026, where this is growing and it's impacting thousands of families, all because one person saw a child and thought, not on my watch. I want
Oh,
to
I
I want to
love
help some people.
That's exactly it. It's a domino effect. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love that. Contribution is the number one thing that makes us fulfilled and happy. So yeah. Which is why we do what we do. Oh,
Exactly.
love that. So, for somebody listening out there who may feel quite weighed down right now from the past or even the present, what is one step that they can take today to begin reclaiming their story?
Oh, I love it. Can I give you and your audience a tool?
Please.
It's a bit cheeky. I
Yeah.
hope you don't mind. We won't
Okay.
get censored though. I'm careful. So I have something I call the butt wheel. BUT, not BUTT, the butt wheel. And I started that way, like we talked about earlier, about how when we talk about tools, we can kind of feel like we're in school and we can kind of get stuck and like, ooh, feel that pushback. So when we think about something as a joke, okay, we're already laughing, right? We're ready. We're in a good space. We can learn a tool. And we also talked about when we want to change something, it's really important that we're not reaching for goals. Like we're not like on a tightrope reaching for something that's far away that we can't reach. We have to reach for something that's in our grasp. We have to start where we are. And so what the butt wheel does is when we're thinking about our goals, what we are often doing is our wheel, the butt wheel, the butts we're hearing in our head all day long, every day, are taking us backwards. We say, I want to write a book, but I've never done that before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's really hard to start with, I want to write a book and be a New York Times bestseller
yeah.
because we've never done that before.
No,
Right? So we end in the butt. But if we say, okay, listen, these are the thoughts I have. This is where I am. This is the pathway I have. What if I just turn it around and I say, instead of I want to write a book, but I've never done that before, I say, I've never done that before, but I want to write a book.
interesting. Wow, reframing.
And it's literally all the same words. But I want everybody to try that. Like if there's something that's, you've been thinking about, but then, you feel that stickiness in your body, you're like, oh, I can't, but I can't, but I can't. But doesn't have to be a bad thing.
No.
We can just change the trajectory. We can say, oh, I've never done that before, but I want to. So try that and tell me, reach out, talks with Dr. Shafer, tell me, hey, I tried the butt wheel. We'll all have a good laugh and you can tell me how it worked because it does really help
Yeah.
with just changing the trajectory. And once we do that, we're neurochemically in a place where we can take on new habits.
Nice. Oh, I love that. Okay, I'll be trying that as well.
Let
Interesting.
me know what made up your butt wheel. Yeah, you can't really see it, I don't think here. I keep it up on my board.
Yeah.
So you just have a wheel, right? It's going forward and back, and
Okay.
I've never done this before, but I want to grow. Or I've never done this before, but you know
Interesting.
what I mean? So it's going backwards and forward. And we have to remember we are not multitaskers. We want to think we are.
Yeah.
Nobody is wired to multitask. So what happens when you are driving your car or riding a bicycle and you look over your shoulder? What do? You veer
Yeah, we do.
because your focus is there. And
Natural.
that's why the butt wheel works,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Change your focus, change where you're ending.
Yeah.
I have never done this before, but I
Mm,
want to write a book. So now our starting off, we are future focused. That's where we're landing instead of landing in the butt. We don't want to do that. We want to be future focused.
beautiful. So, where can my listeners find you, work with you, and see the amazing books that you have published?
Well, you can find me at my website, drshaferstejanova.com. That's a great place to find everything and, coaching, the books, everything. You can also find the books on, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever it is you like to buy your books. The nice thing, if you go through my website, I'll autograph it. If you want to have me come and read the book, so I had two books come out this year. One was for more of a mindset, um, building focused of habits, etc. book that was with Jim Britt, is endorsed by Tony Robbins, called Cracking the Rich Code. So that came out this year. That's more for adults. But I also had my book tour for The Boy and His Brightly Colored Blocks, which I'm really passionate about. It's about a little boy who loves his brightly colored blocks and he dislikes anything that brings him away from them. And it's
Oh,
all about his relationship with his mom and how she helps him learn to move through his emotions rather than getting stuck in them. Right. And understand that also, as we're learning, as we're building, things break, and that's okay. We can just build it better together. So I love this book and I love going out to schools and reading it. So if anyone's interested in that, you can contact me through the website and on all social media. YouTube Talks with Dr. Shafer is how to find me.
oh, beautiful. I love that. It's been such an absolute honor having you on, Dr. Schaefer. The incredible work that you're doing, I'm just so wowed by it. And I just think you're just this amazing, beautiful angel that's been sent down to earth to help so many people.
That is so kind. I'm going to take that as a wonderful affirmation to bring with me the rest of the day. That's so kind. And I really appreciate what you're doing. As I said at the beginning, I think it's so important that we create these spaces and that when we're thinking kind things about others, that we share them with them. That's so healing because we're not that kind to ourselves in our mind, but we
Mm.
can help each other fix that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So, my beautiful listeners, hope you enjoyed this show. Please do reach out to Dr. Schaefer, connect with her. I'll be adding all the links into this episode. And again, it's been such a pleasure to serve you all today again. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Stay blessed, my friends.